started looking at the car, and they were able to lift two very large palm prints off of the back bumper of our car.
Wait, so they
Very
were able to
large.
get the prints off of the car from this?
Yes, it
Really?
left prints.
Well, what did you do with that?
They still, the IBRO has it.
Oh.
Yep, we keep those things. But yeah, these were huge palm prints. I mean, my husband is 6'3", and he has got big hands, and his hand wasn't even half the size of this palm print. And it had the lines that were supposed to be there were there, and since it was damp, you could see the hair around the palm print, where when they pushed, the hair had actually touched the side of the car.
Oh, wow.
It was amazing. But it scared the living daylights out of him.
I don't doubt it. It doesn't surprise me one bit.
But they love to mess with him. They love to mess with him when I'm not there. They will come up and do things really close.
I think it's just part of that intimidation factor, with it being a male. They just got to show their dominance, as with the female. You got to think just kind of like how we're naturally, inclined to treat one another, right?
Yeah, well, I think it's more of, I think they love to play games.
Yeah.
They like to play games. They probably got a good laugh out of how he reacted.
They just think it's funny. They're not necessarily out there to harm you. No,
not at all. And that's why I said that's how I've evolved from the beginning until now. And how my entire view of what they are, not so much just how they are, but what they are as beings, not creatures, not animals, they're beings. And they're very intelligent, and they're very curious, and I do believe they care. And I know this because it was one night, it was not this past summer, but the summer before, myself, my husband, my daughter, we had camped there one night. There were several families in the campground that night, and it was probably 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. I was woken up by shotgun. I heard a shotgun. And it's not hunting season until November.
Mm-hmm.
So there should not be gunshots in the middle of the forest that time of night, in the middle of the night. And it woke me up out of a dead sleep. And I kind of laid there for a few minutes, and all of a sudden I heard a Bigfoot scream come from the other end of the campground. And immediately I heard tents unzipping. I heard people getting in their cars and everything. And then we heard more of a kind of noise, a deeper noise up closer to us. And by the time we got up that morning, everybody in the campground was gone.
Really?
Everybody. A lot of people even left in the middle of the night. We listened to our recordings, and you can hear them clearly coming up into the campground after they had heard the gunshots. Now, one might say they were running from the gunshots, or they were coming up to see if the humans were okay. But a similar thing happened to my daughter and I last June. It was probably a month or two after that incident. My daughter and I were out there, just us. It was the summer solstice, and we picked that day in particular. And we did our things and, put out our gifts and all that stuff. And, we heard them around that night, moving, pretty close to us and everything, not really making a big deal. I think they were just kind of watching. And we went to bed that night, and we noticed that there was a camper that had come in later, and he had set up at the other end of the campground up the road. And same thing happened. This time it was 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning, gunshots. And I sat straight up in bed again. And I'm like, what in the hell is going on? Because this was the same night that it had happened to us, because it was a Monday into a Tuesday. This was the same time my daughter and I were saying was a Monday into a Tuesday. And I laid there, trying to calm my heart down. And I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I hear it moving up the up the side of the hill. And I can hear it walking. And then once it moved from the forest onto the dirt area where the camping site was, I could feel it stepping. And it's probably from our tent to the edge of the forest. Oh, it's probably a good, I'd say 50 feet or more. And he got to our tent in 3 steps.
What?
3 steps.
Dang.
And he stepped around the back of the tent. And I'm laying there, and the very top of the window next to where I was laying was kind of unzipped. He was behind the tent, and I was laying there, and I swear to God, I froze. I completely froze, and I don't know why. And he went to step around, and he hit the guy line, because we had the guy lines pulled tight because it had been storming earlier. He hit the guy line. The entire corner above me kind of buckled in and then buckled back out, where he like stepped into it and then stepped back.
Yeah.
And so he stepped around it, and he was standing right there at the window where I could hear him breathing. I could feel that he was right there. And all I would have had to have done was open my eyes and look up. And I would have probably been, well, maybe staring at his crotch. I don't know. But he then took a few steps around to my daughter's side and stood there for a minute, and then he left. And the next morning we got up, and I told Michaela what had happened. And she's like, well, thank God I was snoring and asleep, because that would have really made me wet the bed. And I said, no, but I think he was checking on us. I think he came up to see if we were okay. And she goes, well, I wonder if that guy up there had heard anything. So as we packed up and we were leaving, I went ahead and pulled in and asked him. And I said, hey, did you happen to hear anything unusual? And he looked at me, and he kind of went pale. And I'm like, are you okay? And he's like, well, he goes, something was out walking around my tent about 4 o'clock in the morning. It was stepping on the tarp that I have under my tent, and I thought it was you until I realized you were 2 females and that you would not be out here walking around my tent. And I'm like, no, it wasn't us. He looked at me and goes, okay. So what was that? And I'm like, it's probably what you're thinking it is. Because I didn't want to totally freak him out, and he goes, there are Bigfoots here, aren't there? I said, yes, there are. And the guy's like, I knew it. I knew it. I kept hearing these footsteps, and I kept hearing this noise. And then at 4 o'clock in the morning, it's walking around my tent. It's like stepping, and he's stepping on, walking around his own tent, making the noise that it was making. And he said he made no secret that he was here. And he goes, am I safe? He goes, I was going to stay here a couple more days and go hiking. Am I safe? I said, you're absolutely safe. I said, if he wanted to hurt you, he would have picked up your tent, wrapped you up like a burrito, and eaten you. I said, you wouldn't have been able to do a darn thing about it. And he said, yeah, that's true. So I do believe they're very protective. I think they're protective not only to the people that they feel close to, and I know that my family has built a rapport with them, for over 3 years, giving them gifts and letting them know that we care. But the people that hang around us, they know that they're like part of our clan. So they show them a lot of respect. It's really, really a cool thing. It's a really cool thing. The last gift they left, I thought, was one of the most thoughtful.
What was that?
Because this happened. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I just said, and what did they leave?
Well, this was just a few months ago. Early spring, we had run into 2 timber rattlers very close to the gifting site. And my husband freaked. Completely freaked, would not go back there with me. Then when he did, I actually went out and bought him some snake chaps to wear. And he would go back there with me, but he would carry a big stick. And it was the second week after that we had gone back there. There was this enormous petrified wood. It looks like a staff that a wizard would carry. And it was laying gently across the gifting site. It couldn't have fallen from anything because it's like very old and very petrified. And it's the perfect size to be a staff, a walking staff. And I told him, I said, I don't think this is for me. This is for you. He goes, why? I said, because you've been carrying a big stick because you're afraid of the snakes. They saw that. So they left this for you. And he just shook his head. He's like, this just gets weirder and weirder. I said, it's not weird. It's not weird. It's just their way. I guess it kind of freaks him out because they show so many human characteristics. And that doesn't bother me so much.
No, I kind of think that makes it easier.
It does.
Yeah. Now. Let me ask you this. I just got a couple more questions. I won't keep you all night. But, where do you think they live? Do you think they live in these little tree hut houses that they build, or do you think they're in caves, underground?
I think they're underground.
Underground, because that's kind of my thought.
Well, the way I look at it, here in Indiana, we have limestone, and a lot of limestone. And there are underground limestone caverns. You can come out here and visit, and you can get in a boat, and you can ride in these caverns and, underground. And a lot of these caverns have never been discovered. And many of them are discovered by accident when, there's a little pond that all of a sudden disappears because it finally caves in and goes underground. And there's a lot of those in southern Indiana. So I believe wholeheartedly that they can move around and probably live in those caverns, in the limestone caverns underneath.
I mean, it would make sense as to why, they can evade detection as well as they have. Let me ask you this. If science eventually ever says, Bigfoot is real, we have evidence of this, do you believe that they will make that a protected species?
Yes. Absolutely. I do. Excuse me. Back in the 1930s, Washington State had the Bigfoot listed on their on all of their brochures about the animals that lived in their forests.
Oh, really? They actually admitted it for a second.
Absolutely did. And it was quite common to find articles about people running into these big hairy mountain men or monsters or whatever they would call them at the time. And it was quite common. And, as people, moved through the ages, people just started getting too smart for their own britches and saying, no, there's no way. There's no way something could exist out there and me not see it. Well, maybe because they're a little smarter than you. That's just the way I see it. But yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that they do live underground. Because if they lived above ground, surely, people would be able to run across their nesting sites and their homes and things like that.
Yeah, that's exactly my point of thinking that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, I got to say, you've definitely done a lot of research, and we can tell. And I was so excited
I see
about
it.
this.
It's fun. I enjoy it. And, sometimes the things that I leave for them may not seem to have any rhyme or reason, but they do. And, I've developed this rapport with them where they trust me and they take food from me and they take gifts from me. And like I said, I'm hoping one day that they will, be able to show themselves to me more. I mean, they come close. They come so close to us all the time. They will answer me if I'm worried if they haven't been by in a while. You guys have got to let me know you're around. We're going to be over here for the night. And sure enough, they'll show up. And they'll let us know they're there. And so they care. When I worry, They care that I work.